Welcome to Card Central 365, which is powered by Gray Bar. He's Mike Claiborne. I'm Stefan Caray on STL Sports Central. All content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Yet another interesting game for the Cardinals. They fight. They give you a finish, but unfortunately they were on the losing end of the Toronto Blue Jays in game one of this series. Claibs, before we really dive into the nitty-gritty, just your initial thoughts following that game.
Well, it was a gut punch for sure. You battle to get back in it. Barrios was really good last night against the Cardinals. Once Palante settled in, he gave him 7 innings. You had him where you wanted. And one of the things about this team that we're noticing, you can bring the start out, and he can give you all he has. But the Cardinals have this ability to get into somebody's bullpen and really cash some teams in. And they did it last night for the most part. Obviously, the 9th inning didn't work for a lot of reasons. And then the 10th inning, you give up the run. But then you have your fastest guy on second base, and you don't try and steal third where a fly ball put you back in the game. So, there's a lot of things that went on yesterday that you kind of scratch your head at. And I think one of the other things that comes into play is you got to find a right-handed bat somewhere. If Jordan Walker's going to – he may go out later this week for a rehab, but who in the organization that's not in the lineup that you can plug in as a right-handed bat when you need one late, or just another bat in the lineup?
It's a great question. Ryan Vilade striking out on 3 pitches. It has not been the easiest thing to watch for Cardinals fans. Again, adjusting from AAA to Major League pitching is not an easy thing to do. But there are 2 players that I think have received a little bit of flack from last night's game. Ryan Helsley has blown 3 consecutive saves. He's pitched particularly well. It's not like he's walking guys, but that fastball is getting hit hard. And, of course, Lars Nootbaar, who we discussed yesterday, has really been ice cold at the plate.
Yeah, Lars is he's fighting it right now. And that happens during the course of a season. You have to remember, one of the things about this, Lars Nootbaar has been relatively healthy throughout the season, which hasn't been the case the last couple of seasons. And so maybe he's at a point where he's kind of hitting a wall and, has to push the reset button. And how you fix that, I don't know. If you can drop him in the order. I know he was out yesterday taking some extra hitting very early in the afternoon. So it's not like he's not putting the effort in. But, sometimes you can work really hard and not see the fruits of your work. But in his case, he might just be hitting the wall right now. And, it's part of the season, just like Helsley. Last year, having 31 consecutive saves, that's probably not the norm. And what we're seeing now is probably not closer to it, but probably something that's more, I guess, accepted as part of a whole season. That doesn't mean Helsley can't get people out, because I know he can. He's just going through something right now, and maybe there's a tell on him. I don't know. But, when he gets hit hard.
And you really start to see him leaning on that slider when that fastball is getting hit and they just don't swing at it. So there's a lot of plate discipline. Credit to Alejandro Kirk, to the Toronto Blue Jays, a team that in their own right are a very good baseball team. Now, Last night, frustrating in a number of ways, but also maybe you can take a deep breath knowing the Brewers lost, the Cubs lost. We're not quite at Flag Day yet, so you don't necessarily lose any ground. But after you took that lead in the 8th inning, you would have certainly liked to gain some ground.
Yeah, that's why the 9th was such a tough one to swallow, because you had everything working in your favor and you just couldn't get that last out. But, the best thing about it is you have today to worry about. And you go out and see what you can do. Miles Michaelis has given the Cardinals a lot more than I think anybody expected. When you think about last season, where he would even tell you that's not what he set out to be. This year, he's giving you quality innings. And I guess the thing Stefan, is it's never pretty, because he's not a strikeout artist. He's a pitch to contact guy. So there are some balls that are hit, but nobody really squares them up like they were doing last year. And that's what's made him effective. So you run him out there tonight, and you see where you go from there.
Well, outside of Sonny Gray, your whole starting pitching staff and virtually your entire relief corps are pitch-to-contact players, and the Cardinals have had one of the best defenses in baseball, which has aided the pitching staff for St. Louis in 2025. I want to talk a little bit about Andre Palante, who struggled early in the game, gave up 2 runs, and he started to wonder, hey, is it going to be another start where he gives up 4 or 5? He settled in very nicely, 13 ground ball outs. That is his second most this year. He looked a lot more like himself in the 3rd through the 6th inning of last night's game.
Yeah, he attacked the right-handed hitters a lot more. The righties have been really giving him problems here recently. And, he's a reverse split guy. And, he went after guys. He showed him the fastball, ran it in on him, didn't give him a chance to really get set and really square up some balls. So I thought he made some in-game adjustments that really benefited him.
He certainly looked great. And the final person I want to touch on before we get into today's game is Ivan Herrera, a 3-run home run to take the lead in the 8th. 5 of his 7 home runs this year have tied the game or taken the lead. He has as much of a clutch gene as anybody on the Cardinals, as anybody I've seen on the Cardinals in quite some time. And you hate to see it go to waste, but it's good to know for the future that he's built for that moment.
Yeah, you know what? It doesn't seem to phase him at all. When the game's on the line, he's a guy that wants to raise his hand and be the first guy to hit. And he showed it last night. I thought that ball was going to hook foul, to be honest with you. He turned on it so quickly. Guy hung a pitch to him, and he turned on it. And I thought he was going to go foul, but he barely eked in. And, we get the 3-run homer, and we're feeling good about ourselves. And that 9th inning, it will stick with you until tonight. But yeah, Herrera, you know what? It's interesting, Stefan. I was wondering, he got off to such a hot start, then he got hurt, and then he came back and he was even hotter. And I kind of said, well, maybe they're trying to get a book on him, because there wasn't a lot of information about him because he was not a regular player. This year he's playing every day. And I was wondering at what point were teams going to try and pitch him differently. And I think they did for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And he's kind of made some adjustments as well. But he's a guy that if you make a mistake, he will always make you pay. He never gets cheated. But the thing is, he is able to work a walk when necessary. So he's learning how to be more disciplined and spit on pitches that he can't handle compared to just swinging just because the guy throws it. And, sometimes you see guys who do, and it just doesn't work.
A lot of players with that power profile, they tend to expand their strike zone. They chase, not Ivan Herrera. And I think that's why he gets better pitches and has been able to do such damage, is because he controls the strike zone so well and will wait for his pitch. We certainly saw that last night.
Yeah, and he's a guy that doesn't need to see a lot of pitches. He's a first pitch swinger. I think he may have the highest percentage of first pitch swings on the team now. He and Wilson Contreras were right up there, but although Ivan is a little bit more successful than Wilson, he's a guy looking to hit, and he doesn't need 5, 8, 9 pitches. You just give him one that he likes, and he's going to go for it.
Card Central 365 is powered by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. He is Mike Claiborne. I'm Stefan Caray. Now let's talk about tonight, Game 2. We want to flush yesterday, turn the page on a game that had some good moments and some not so great moments. Tonight, it's Miles Mikolas up against Chris Bassitt, who has had a nice career revival in Toronto. Good numbers this season for the Blue Jays. On the mound, he's 6-3 with a 3.56 ERA, went 7 innings, giving up just 1 run against, at that point, a struggling Philadelphia Phillies team. Miles Mikolas may be the surprise of the year for St. Louis. He has had a really good go, 4-2, 3.96 ERA, and has given them a chance to win virtually every time he's towed the rubber. And that's certainly one of the things that we're really going to look forward to in this game. Miles Mikolas, in his career against Toronto, has struggled a bit. A 6 ERA, 15 strikeouts in 3 appearances versus the Blue Jays. But Chris Bassitt, 1-1 with a 7.58, 11 strikeouts, 4 appearances against the Cardinals. Now, these two guys, I think, could pitch a similar style of game, pitch to contact. The Cardinals will be ready. You have to imagine that it's going to be a lefty-heavy order featuring Burleson, maybe Nolan Gorman, who has started to swing the bat a little bit better. But this is where the Cardinals can start to level the playing field a little bit. They aren't a team that loses 3 in a row often. It's been quite some time since they've lost 3 consecutive games. We lost Mike Claiborne here for a second. So I'm going to do my best to wear the analyst hat. And he's back. Welcome back, Claibs. We were talking about Chris Bassitt versus Miles Mikolas in Game 2.
Bassitt is a guy that knows how to pitch. He's been around for a while. And, you look at his numbers over the last 5, 7 years, he's always under 4 from an ERA standpoint. And a lot of times he's under 3.5. So he knows what he's doing out there. He's an experienced pitcher. and he will give the Cardinals some challenges this evening. And Miles will probably do the same thing with Toronto. I was impressed with Toronto's hitting approach last night. They don't strike out a lot. They put the ball in play. One of my favorite players in the game is Alejandro Kirk, and how he handles himself, because you look at him, he can flat out hit, man. And he is a hitter. He's an acceptable catcher. But when you look at him and then you think about Guerrero, you think about Bichette, they've got some pretty good players, not to mention bringing over George Springer. I mean, this is a pretty good lineup that they run out there.
It really is. And you talk about Alejandro Kirk. They mentioned this on the broadcast yesterday that he grew up a Cardinals fan. So he was a big fan of St. Louis and the team. And maybe coming to Busch Stadium has woken him up a little bit for his series against the Cardinals. Multi-hit game yesterday, was really the main producer of offense, a couple of doubles. And that's not a very speedy player. He was hitting it to places where it might have been 3 bags for some of the other players on their team. But keeping him in check is going to be important for Miles Mikolas tonight, who, again, was sharp his last time out, 6 innings, 3 runs. That's a quality start. That's pretty much all you can ask from Miles Mikolas at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? If he goes through the order twice, maybe 3 times, without getting roughed up, I think you can kind of book on that. And the challenge Miles has had not having enough run support. I mean, he's had to, fight tooth and nail for everything. If they give him some run support, who knows what he can do tonight. And as I said, runs may be hard to come by for both teams, but in Miles's case, one of the things you can always say about him is he will take the ball every 5th day. He will always lead your team in innings. And you know what? He's a gamer. He's a very competitive guy.
This is an interesting comment here from Chewy. They say, we need a lineup change. We talked about this yesterday. And again, we're not the manager. We're not the general manager. But if you could construct a lineup right now that would maybe change things up for this team, how would you like to see it assembled?
Good question. I think I have to look at my elements and what I have. I know that, we talk about, you and I have had discussions, and I've heard other people talk about moving Mason Wynn into the leadoff spot. Perhaps, but Mason Wynn is a guy that's not a very good base stealer right now in his career. So it kind of takes away that element of the old Cardinal way of, you get on, you steal second, sacrifice over the third, fly ball, get you in, and here we go. Mason Wynn is a very good 2-strike hitter. I think he might be more valuable in the 2 spot because of the fact he's a 2-strike hitter and he can hit with runners on base. Now, the question is, who do you put in the leadoff spot? I think that's the challenge right now. I know he's struggling. I give Victor Scott a look. And because, hitting in that bottom of the order, I know they say, well, he'll be on base with, later in the game, and there'll be some thump behind him. And that's true. But if you're trying to get your offense started early to get him on base, and again, I know he's fighting a little bit. I think maybe his hitting approach would be different. I think Victor Scott's got to be a guy who doesn't need to try and hit for power. As we learned last year, you have to keep the ball out of the air. And, he's striking out a little too much right now because I think he's guessing more than just trying to apply himself. So, but other than that, I don't know if you have a leadoff man on this team, to be honest with you, as far as what you're looking for. I mean, this roster is, when you look at the roster, it's got some quirks to it. How many teams have 4 catchers on your roster? I mean, that's kind of a hoot in its own right. Or 3 catchers rather, and not 4. And so when you have situations where you're limited in certain areas, you have to make the most of it, and sometimes it catches up to you.
You've seen that Ollie's approach has been to stack lefties at the top of the order. He likes to have Nootbaar leading off and then Brendan Donovan hitting third. That's because they're facing mostly right-handed pitching. It hasn't really worked out a ton for the Cardinals this year. It feels like, at least of late, they've been trailing early in most games. So maybe a lineup shakeup is something that we'll see coming soon, or they'll continue to ride with Nootbaar, who we know can get hot on a dime. And as soon as he does, I think the team is going to be much better off.
Well, if he plays well, the team's going to be better. There's no doubt about that. How he gets better, what he does to get himself back into a groove, that's what we're all waiting for. And hopefully it'll be here sooner than later.
I certainly agree. He's Mike Claiborne. I'm Stefan Caray. This is Card Central 365, powered by Graybar on the STL Sports Central. And all content here is provided by DraftKings. It's a reminder that baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select two or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5. Get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Welcome back to Card Central 365. The Cardinals have dropped 4 straight series openers against American League teams. A lot of interleague play for St. Louis. I know some people have their gripes about it. You have yet to really get into your division schedule, which might be the reason why the Cardinals are still 4 games back. Haven't been able to gain much ground because you're playing all these tough American League teams. But a couple of positive trends for St. Louis. Brendan Donovan has reached safely in 11 career games played against Toronto, and Nolan Gorman has hit safely in each of his last 5 starts. I mean, he has really turned a corner and is starting to look better at the plate.
Yeah, he is looking better. I don't think there's any question about that. Let me run this by you. You know, he hits against lefties these days. I'm of the belief, you know, if he's part of your future and he's part of the evaluation process, run him out there, play him, find a spot for him, and let's see what he does for a month, and just let him play on a regular basis and be given that opportunity. Now, how do you do that? That's a $64,000 question. I know they want to put him in good matchup situations. I just think at this point, let him go out there and face anybody. You know, if he can't succeed, then you don't want him anyway. So you might as well find out what he has and go from there, and ride him while he's simmering. I won't say he's hot, but he is improved, you know, slightly compared to what we've been accustomed to seeing. So I'm of the belief, just play him. You know, maybe he and Burleson flip-flop times where they play against, you know, certain players, certain pitchers. But I like to see him play on a regular basis for at least a week. You know, if I can stretch it out to a month, you know, perhaps. I think it depends on what the team is doing as well. But I think we're at a point now we need to know whether this guy can play or not, and whether he can help you.
And they might need to consider maybe letting him put on an outfield glove, learn left field. I mean, if Kyle Schwarber could play out there, I don't believe that Nolan Gorman has an inability to have a chance to play out there, and that might give you a little bit more flexibility with where you can stick him.
Yes, although left field is a little crowded right now because, you know, you have Nootbaar there, Donovan can play there. You know, the irony is all these guys are left-handed hitters. It'd be different if he was a righty. We find a better spot for him. But I'm not an advocate of thinking everybody can put a glove on, go play a new position when they've never played it in their life at the big league level or any other level. That's something I probably would have done in spring training, just to kind of to see if he can get a taste of it. So I'm probably not going to put that burden on him at this stage of the year.
And this was yesterday, a moment where they pulled Gorman to get that lefty-righty switch. The bullpen came in, Ryan Valade struck out swinging. And I think a lot of people were making the same point that you were, is at the beginning of the year, the Cardinals were holding firm to the idea this is about development, about giving runway. I think you can point to Nolan Gorman as pretty much the one area where they haven't remained super firm on that idea. In all other aspects, pretty much with every other player, they've given a ton of runway. Gorman, I don't know if he's earned it, but from my understanding, it wasn't about earning it or not. It was, you're going to have runway regardless of if you drown, if you swim, if you tread water. And that just hasn't been the case for number 16.
No, it hasn't. And, you know, I think we've seen enough of Ryan Valade to know that he can't help you in this situation. So I know you want to go with the percentages, righty and lefty, righty versus lefty, but Nolan Gorman has a higher value to you and your organization than Ryan Villet. So I'm not giving him any more at bats. I'm going to say, Gorman, here you go. If he's a good lefty and he gets you out, then you tip your cap. But he's hit lefties better. So I'm going to run him out there in that situation, even though it may be against the traditional grain. But I got to find out what he can do. Because if you're a good player, you have to face lefties and righties. Now, you may not be as successful, but you know what? If you're a good player and that's what you're banking on, you don't draft guys in the first round to think they're going to be average. So you need to figure out what he can do and how he can get it done.
Remember a few years ago, Nolan Gorman went on a run where he was hitting over 300. He was hitting what felt like a home run every other game. And that's in him if he starts to get more at bats. We're starting to see him develop a little bit more, which is a positive sign. But it also starts to make things interesting for Ollie Marmol. When Gorman was striking out all the time and looked lost at the plate, it was easier to not play him. Now it's a decision. Hey, another power hitting lefty bat that might be able to help us. We've got to find a spot for him, and it's going to crowd somebody else out, which is a good problem to have. But if you're the Cardinals, you want to stick with what works. And that's maybe the one variable that you're still not 100% sure about on this team.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's somebody's going to pay the price to give him a look. I don't know who that is at this point, but that's why he's a manager and I'm not, because, they have to figure it out on what's best for the team. Okay. If we can help this young man, that's great, but it's still about getting wins and being successful as a team, and trying to juggle those things can be a little bit of a challenge.
So tonight, before we send this thing off, it's game 2 against the Blue Jays. You had a crushing defeat yesterday. How do you motivate yourself to come back and win game number 2 and get back on track?
Oh, that's easy. Most people turned the page on yesterday. The only people who are still talking about it are people who weren't playing in the game. I mean, that's why we look forward to the next day, because there's always one the next day. You try and take a positive from it. If somebody's swinging the bat well, then hooray for him. If somebody's pitching well, then hey, nice job. And everything else, you can't worry about, because it's out of your hands. It's nothing you can do about it today. The only thing you can do about today is making sure you have a better performance against a really good team in the Toronto Blue Jays. To sit there and lament it and go home and kick the cat and all of that sort of stuff, it doesn't do you any good. I mean, season's too long for that. You take the losses, and some people take them personal. Some people just say that's part of the game, and we just got to go get them tomorrow. And somewhere in between is the right mix of how you get yourself ready to go, because you can't worry about what happened yesterday.
Well, one thing,
even if you're Ryan Helsley, there are two positions in sports that you better have a short memory, and that's being a relief pitcher, a closer, and a cornerback in football. If you start worrying about that too much, then guess what? You'll be watching instead of participating.
I think that's very well said, Mr. Claiborne. I hope you have a wonderful night at the ballpark. 6:45 first pitch. Let's hope the Cardinals will motivate themselves to take a win in game 2. One thing's for certain that we've known all year long is they will be well prepared. This staff will have them ready for Chris Bassett, who will toe the rubber against Miles Michaelis. Claibs, thanks so much for coming on here on STL Sports Central. This is Card Central 365. Stefan Caray, Mike Claiborne signing off until another time, hopefully after a Cardinals win.